Taxonomy of angiosperms. Grouping plants having similar characters and putting them into categories is, simply speaking, classification. Classification is well studied under taxonomy. The term taxonomy was first coined by famous French botanist A.P.D. Cantoli in 1813. Abercrombie et al. In 1880 explained about science of classification of organisms according to their resemblances and differences. In those days, systematics and taxonomy were synonymously used, but systematics is wider to include the identification, practice of classification, and nomenclature. The two terms, taxonomy and systematics, can be studied with the help of different authors. Andrew Sugden in 1986 stated science of classification and the relationship of organisms is taxonomy, and systematics is the part of classification that involves arrangement of organisms into related groups. But Jones and Luchinger in 1987 believed that botanists have no distinction between systematics and taxonomy. However, some botanists treat them different groups. Accordingly, systematics is the study of diversity of plants and their identification, naming, classification, and evolution, while taxonomy is restricted to only arrangement by rules, restricted to only classification. However, Greek meaning of each term is taxonomy as arrangement by rules, and systematics is to put together. Basic components of classification. There are four terms: classification, identification, description, nomenclature. As explained, classification is arrangement of botanical groups with definite circumscriptions by position and rank according to artificial criteria, phenetic similarities, and phylogenetic relationships. Identification is finding or determining the similarities and dissimilarities. Description is extracting features of animals or plants. Nomenclature, naming or giving names to them. History of plant taxonomy. Aristotle developed the first classification, followed by Theophrastus, the grandfather of modern botany, classified the plants into herbs, shrubs, subshrubs, trees, etc. He distinguished non-flowering plants from flowering plants, and he stated calyx and corolla are the modified leaves. He used asparagus, daucus, and narcissus. These are used even today in the same sense. Little is about 1000 years after AD, and around 1500 years, the medieval ages, it's a period of classification of monocots, dicots, etc., and separated non-vascular from vascular plants, etc. After medieval ages, Andrea Casalpino, an Italian, was the first scientist to classify plants. followed by Caspar Bauhan, Swiss botanist, established distinction between concept of genus and species. 18th century belongs to Carl Linnaeus. He is the creator of modern system of classification, binomial system of classification. He was the originator of sexual classification. What is classification? According to Andrew Sturgeon, defined as the naming of species and their grouping into families, orders, division, etc. Radford stated that classification is the arrangement of groups of plants with particular circumscriptions by rank and position according to artificial criteria, phenetic similarities, or phylogenetic relationship. In the simplest form, classification is placement of plants and animals and objects into groups and categories with clear understanding, proper study, and effective organization. Ranks of classification. The organisms are grouped into species, genus, family, order, class, and division. And these are divided into sub-ranks. Subform, form, sub-varieties, varieties, and subspecies are the subcategories of species. Similarly, subsection, section, and subgenus are the categories of genus. Similarly, continues as subdivision, subclass, subfamily, subtribes, etc. Several species are included within a genus, several genera within a family, several families within an order, and therefore we study their hierarchy. Types of systems of classification. Basically, there are three types in the past mentioned about systems: artificial system, natural system, and phylogenetic system. In artificial system, few characters are taken, and in natural system, more characters based on morphology, anatomy, embryology, etc. are taken into consideration for classification. Phylogenetic system is based on completely evolution. Artificial system of classification, Aristotle developed the first system of classification based on his observation in animals. So classified into minerals, plants, animals, humans, living, non-living, etc. Theophrastus classified plants into 4 groups: herbs, shrubs, subshrubs, and trees. He distinguished non-flowering plants and emphasized based on many characters. And his publication is from in Historia Plantarum, and his contributions are fundamental differences between dicotyledons and monocots, differences between racemose and cymose inflorescences, and polypetalous and gamopetalous corolla, superior and inferior ovary. It was too much at that time to do this. Next, Linnaeus was the first one to classify based on artificial system, and he established a relationship of number of stamens and carpels in plants, flowers. It is also called a sexual system of classification. A more supportive are given like Secundus, Discourses, Magnus, etc. Natural system of classification. Michael Anderson, first person to reject all the artificial systems and proposed natural systems, a French botanist, and published in Families D Plants. He grouped plants into orders, families, as seen in modern system of classification. Next, natural system is given by most highly, latest, best followed, widely followed classification proposed by George Bentham and Joseph Dalton Hooker. They made through observations of the materials from the herbaria, and very little information was taken from literal and previously existing classifications. Published in Genera Plantanum. There are more supportive of natural classifications. Phylogenetic classification, it's completely Darwin's theory of organic evolution, and botanists started classifying plants based on origin of species. Based on that, S. Endlicher, A.W. Eichler started the phylogenetic system of classification, which is modified by A. Engler and K. Prantl. Engler and Prantl started with the smallest, simplest plants and ended with the highly complex floral structure, families like Compositae, Asteraceae, etc. C. Bessay categorized the plants on the basis of primitiveness and advancements, followed by Richard von Wetzen, an Australian botanist, Hans Haldier, etc. John Hutchinson, British botanist, classified based on phylogenetic systems with the help of 24 general characters. More supportive of phylogenetic systems are Taxogen, Cronquist, Dahlgren, Thorne, etc. But Radford classified and stated 4 systems of classification: artificial existing, followed by mechanical classification. This is based on habitat as well as organs of fructification, such as position, locule, number, and seed numbers. Some mechanical classification supportives are Bauhan, Castle-Pino, Ray, Tonfort, etc. And followed by natural system of classification and phylogenetic system of classification. However, a 5th system of classification is followed from 1958 AD, phonetic system. This is based on overall characters known to its own time, and emphasis were made with the natural relationship of organisms, and not only classified based on phylogenetic system of classification. This is based on numerical taxonomy. It is a comparative science comparing large number of characteristics of one organism with another using statistical methods and computer technology. Supportive are Marvin, Taxogen, Cronquist, Rolf, Dahlgren system, etc. Some important contributors of classification. Carl Linnaeus. Artificial system of classification has given by him, completely emphasized on binomial system and nomenclature, followed by till today. He has divided the plants on the basis of number, size, length, and union of stamens into 24 classes, such as monandria with one flowers with one stamen, diandria with two stamens, etc. Classes were made based on style, like digynia, flowers with one style, two styles, monogynia, flowers with one styles, etc. Like his classification is published in 7 publications. The most important are Genera Plantarum, Species Plantarum, and Systema Naturae in their respective years. Quick and easily identified plants with the help of these easily observable characters. That is only merit. And demerits are there are many characters were neglected. And this is followed by Bentham and Hooker's system of classification, naturally observed and famous, followed by till today, this system of classification. And the merits are: first, general natural classification, never planned based on phylogeny. Monocots are derived from dicots according to this system. Demerits: gymnosperms came between dicots and monocots. Several important floral characters were missing in his classification. Engler and Prantl, phylogenetic system of classification. It was Jones and Luchinser stated this as transitional phylogenetic classification because it started first, and Radford said this system of classification is completely phylogenetic. They classified all plants, algae, angiosperms into 14 divisions. Merits include Polypetalae monoclinidae were abolished to subclass Archiclamidae. Orchidaceae and Compositae are considered as advanced families. Several closely related families were kept together. Demerits: monocots were given first place before dicots. Naked flowers of Amandiferae have been treated primitive in this system of classification. Charles Edwin Bessey. The next phylogenetic classification given by him. He has a certain guiding principles of primitive and advanced characters called dicta. And according to him, Ranels were the primitive angiosperms. One branch of Ranels developed into monocots and other into dicots. Therefore, his system is called Ranelian concept of evolution. Merits: monoclinidae has been completely abolished and he kept in opposite flora. Ranels are starting point among dicotyledons. Demerits monocots have been placed first. Hypogyny, perigamy, epigyny were emphasized many times. Comparing Englerian and Bessarian concept of classification, Englerian school believed the primitive flowers to be apetalous and unisexual, while Bessarian believed polypetalous and bisexual. Englerian wind pollination is primitive, while it was the insect pollination according to Bessarian school. So there were many differences among them. John Hutchinson, the most important contributor in the modern, along with the habitat as the criteria, and therefore the classification did not become famous. He used many, like 24 characters for classification. Many of the characters, such as perennials, are older than annuals and biennials. Aquatic flowering plants are derived from terrestrial ancestors. Dicots are primitive compared to monocots. Inflorescence is more advanced than solitary flowers. Polypetally is more primitive than gamopetalous. Apocarpy is primitive than syncarpy, like very useful characters used in classification. And merits are small size of orders, families, etc. It is closely related to phylogeny of angiosperms. Demerits for plant identification, this system is not much utility. Separates families, they have to have close affinities. Current contributions to classification. First is Armen Takshajan, Botanical Institute of Academy of Sciences, Leningrad, proposed a system of classification of flowering plants in Russian, but translated into English in 1969 in Flowering Plants, Origin and Dispersal. According to him, angiosperms are monophyletic and evolved from some very ancient group of gymnosperms. These are latest classifications having many characters. Hence it is called phylogenetic but phenetic type of classification. Some of the most important characters used are woody plants are primitive. Deciduous woody plants are evolved from evergreen plants. Parallel venetion is most advanced. Most primitive leaf arrangement is alternate. Cymous inflorescence is primitive. Apocarpus gynoecium is the characteristics of primitive taxa, etc. Many more characters because it is a recent classification. The second one is Arthur Cronquist of New York Botanical Garden proposed a comprehensive system of classification of angiosperms and published in Evolution and Classification of Flowering Plants, and the second, an integrated system of classification of flowering plants. It covered wide variety of characters. The third, the last is Robert F. Thorne, 1920, Rancho Santo Ana Botanical Garden, Claremont, California, published a phylogenetic system of classification, also called a phenetic system of classification. This is on the basis of comparative morphology, ultrastructure, embryology, paleobotany, cytology, plant geography, pollen and seed morphology, all the latest techniques available today. And the system of classification and its criteria for classification continues, because it is not limited to this much, but a degree student can benefit by taking some of the points from this, and they can write about 3 to 4 pages of this classification that may add up. If any clarification or more information, contact 9783599073. Thanks.